Hey everyone, this is a First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing kind of an interesting update this morning based on the big storm that's not only going to impact my viewing area here in the Carolinas, but eventually the Northeast. So we'll focus a little bit on both, but really want to get into some of the model data for the snow in the Northeast. And while I'm starting to think that this is going to be a historic event for some parts of the Northeast, the confidence in the model data starting to get better. And part of the reason the model data is getting better is we actually have both systems we're watching now visible on the map. So they're being sampled by our intense upper air network as well as satellite radar and surface observations. You can see our two pieces of energy. Now you're going to hear this a lot over the next couple of days. This is the northern stream energy coming down in the northern branch of the jet stream, and then we have a southern branch system that's going to move up the coast, and they're going to kind of meet here in the Northeast. Now the big snows are actually going to occur across the Great Lakes into the Northeast initially because of this system, but this is the system. If we're going to get a record-breaking blizzard and nor'easter, it's going to be because of this tropical connection, really, that's coming up from the south with the southern system. That's the one that's going to bring the boatload of moisture and could cause some big issues. So let's get right to the model data. I'm just getting the 12Z data from the NAM, but let's go back and look at the 6Z NAM model, which has been, let's be honest, the most extreme model out there. It's been putting out some ridiculous totals. So when you look at this out to 60 hours, you can see the amount of snow that's being produced in this area. I mean, it's just ridiculous. If you look right in here, this is from southern Maine down into eastern Massachusetts. And if you look over on the right on the chart here, you're approaching 30 inches, and anything in the pink is a foot plus. So you got a huge area of a foot plus on the NAM. Now let's go to the European model, which has been consistent as well, and it's not shabby. I think a lot of people look at this and think, wow, you know, this maybe isn't as intense, but when you look at the data, we'll look at this one close up as well, you're still looking at very similar totals, maybe shifted a little bit further south, and then the other model. You could see right in here the big time snows are a little farther south into Rhode Island, Connecticut, even Long Island, New York get hit harder, but you're still looking at about some 30-inch totals in eastern Mass, Rhode Island, and eastern Connecticut. Not as much up in Maine, but you still see the big area pink, which is all along the coast and then down into areas towards New York City. So New York, you're not out of the woods yet, but you're more on the line. Now let's look at the GFS model. The GFS has been probably the most timid of the models. So when you look at it out to about, we'll go out to about 120 hours. This should give us a good view of the system through about Monday morning. Let's go through Monday morning. This should give us a real good view. So when you look at the GFS model, it's a little more timid. Here, I'll zoom in a little better there. You can see the totals here are far less. Now, they're in the same location, which is key. The location of the NAM is a little farther north, but the European and the GFS seem to have this southern connection more to New York City, Hartford, Providence, and Boston. You can still see we're probably talking maybe less than 20 inches, but I'm thinking more like around a foot to 8 inches. So definitely the lower of the two models. But something I like to look at a lot is what we call the short range ensemble forecast, or the SHREF we call it. And this is really interesting. This is about 22 to 25 members, which are different models, including the NAM and the GFS. And what you're doing here is you're taking all the different runs of the models and you're kind of averaging them out, and you try to take away the outliers. Now this is for Boston, and you notice the high end, some of the highest extremes up in here are over 40 inches. But here's the interesting thing. The low end, which are actually more outliers than the high end, are still around a foot. But when you look at the mean or the average of all these members, you're looking at somewhere around 30 inches, 29.55 inches. So this is a good way to look statistically at what are the chances I'm going to see big snow. And this is just the Boston area, mind you. I can look at individual cities, but you kind of like take away, okay, maybe in here you've got a 5% chance of this happening. In here you've got about a 5% chance. In here you get into maybe the 30 or 40% chance. Same right in here. And then right in here you're probably talking above a 50% probability. So you start eliminating some of the statistical outliers and you end up with what we call an ensemble forecast. And to me, the interesting trend has been these are actually clustering together pretty well around that 30 inches. But the low end is always interesting. A lot of people focus on the high end, which is, just as wrong as focusing on the low end, because in this case, the low end is still possible. There's probably about a 5% chance. But even if you get the least amount of snow in all these model runs, you're still talking about 12.24 inches of snow. And that's in Boston with a ton of wind on top of it. So there's a lot of things going on here, but I think you're looking at a record-breaking snow for some areas here in the Northeast. Let's go in a little closer, and I'm gonna start taking off some of this information and put the model data on even closer. So one of the cool things about looking at the NAM model is you can see some of these details show up. Now this is the current snow depth, but let's look at how much snow is going to fall on top of this going through the weekend, and this will give you a real good indication of how much snow could fall. And you can see my chart over on the left. This is the NAM model. This is the 6Z. Let me see if the 12Z data is coming in here. I'll pop it over. We might have some 12Z data. Okay, this is the latest model run that just came in. So this is this morning's run. And if you look carefully here, up in here, this is off the charts in southern Vermont. 50 inches, ridiculous. Albany, you're looking at 40 inches. Up here towards Portland, west side, 30 inches. Now around Boston, it's interesting. The newest runs are still at 22.7 inches. So still would be close to record, but look at the lower amounts down here in Hartford and Providence. And probably what's going on here is the track of the low is going to be closer to the coast, which means the heavier precip gets spread inland. In the New York City area, you can see New York right now, based on the newest run of the NAM model, 24.2 inches. And again, this is the latest run of the NAM model. So this will be interesting over the next couple days. We'll keep an eye on the situation for the Carolinas. This is going to be all about rain. You can see the heavy rain, which is going to be heading up here shortly, and most of the heavy rain will be near the coast, but big impacts for everybody on the eastern side of the country, because you shut down some of these big airports and some of the big hubs of travel, you're going to have some big time issues up and down the East Coast. Some of the newest data will be coming out this afternoon, and now that we're getting both systems being sampled by our weather network here in the U.S., we probably will get much better data over the next 24 hours. So that's the latest from Charlotte. If you have any questions, you can always hit me up on Facebook and Twitter. I'm WXBrad on Twitter, and you look up my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Brad Panovich, Panovich.